The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Hello everyone, Kyle Goodman, pastor of Alamance Presbyterian Church, coming to you again. And of course, the passage of scripture that I just read for us needs absolutely no introduction. Psalm 23, one of the most beloved passages in all of scripture. I don't know about you, but for me, it has the interesting quirk of being perhaps the only passage of scripture that I can recite entirely in the King James. And it's also true that I couldn't begin to recite it in a more modern translation. Again, perhaps like you, I learned that scripture when I was very young and learned it in those King James phrasings, and that has stuck with me my whole life long. On the other hand, I think that in being such a familiar passage of Scripture, it's also possible that we are so accustomed to hearing it that perhaps it just becomes rote for us, just a recitation that perhaps brings comfort, but we don't always think about. And so what I want to do with you for just a minute is to think about the psalm and what it means. And then perhaps, even though we love it so much in the King James Version we know very well, to think about how we might apply our own modern spin or contemporary take on the ideas that King David's psalm really embodies. At the heart of this psalm is, of course, the image of the shepherd. Much like growing a large garden or tending the farm was fundamental to the way of life of the people who settled around Alamance Presbyterian Church in the southeast Guilford community for hundreds of years, so was shepherding just written into the fabric of culture in ancient Israel and in first century Palestine. It was an image that the original audience of Psalm 23 would know so very well. Jesus, of course, picks up on this image when he refers to himself in John's Gospel as the good shepherd who would lay down his life for his sheep. Psalm 23 reminds us that it's the shepherd's job to lead the flock through danger from one source of strength and sustenance to another. And so, yes, the sheep have to walk through the dark valley, but the ultimate destination are the green pastures and the still waters that will sustain that flock. The image of shepherd is one that has long been applied to those of us who take on the role of vocational ministry. I'm referred to as the shepherd of the flock at Alamance. The word pastor comes from a Latin root that means shepherd. I heard a sermon illustration once a friend shared with me that I have found helpful and have often taken to heart. The sermon illustration went something like this, that really, ultimately, the shepherd, the pastor, is Christ alone, that Christ is the one who leads us to the green pastures and the still waters. People like me who have that working job of tending to the sheep, well, we're much more like the sheepdog, running around, making sure everyone is corralled and helping that good shepherd take us where we need to go. And I am finding that image more appealing than ever. For one thing, The Goodmans have this new addition to our family I told you about last Sunday. This is Winnie, our new Australian Shepherd Labrador Retriever mix. Yes, she really is that adorable, church. But she won't stay that little as a puppy. She will grow up to be a herding dog, and we can already tell that she is going to be smart and fast and playful and mischievous. But here's the other thing, church. I'm finding this image appealing because as your shepherd, I have to be honest. I'm not sure I know exactly where to lead through this current crisis. It's much more helpful for me, and maybe for you, as we try to make our way, to think about the ultimate good shepherd, the one who did lay down his life for his sheep, being the one who is seeing us through to green pastures and still waters, who is seeing us through this valley of the shadow of death that we are in right now, who in the midst of evil and fear and anger and rage and disappointment and grief is taking us to that house where we will dwell forever. I find that image comforting, and I find it helpful to think perhaps it's my job not to figure out how to get us through this, but just to make sure we're all staying together and that we are doing the Lord's work. And so, two things. I'm going to invite you into that vocation with me, whether you are pastor or not, whether you are vocationally called or not. I believe we are all ministers of the gospel, and we share in that work together, and that our baptism is all that we need for that calling. And so I invite you to think about how you might follow the Good Shepherd and how you might tend God's people. As I said before, as much as I love the familiar and beloved words of Psalm 23 in that old King James Version, I also think that it's worthwhile often to take a new look at what that psalm might mean to us. And so I have written a piece for us, reflection based on what I've been thinking about and the struggles that I've been going through. And I'm going to end by sharing this new telling of the 23rd Psalm with you. But before I do, I want to invite you to do the same. So I'm going to share my new telling of Psalm 23 and invite you, as the Spirit leads you, to write one that might help you and comfort you through this time. The Lord is our pastor. All is not lost. God will guide us through the snaking grocery aisles. God will pilot us through this pestilence and plague. God will revive our world again. And yes, we must go through this hellish valley. And there is so much to fear. But there is good news of great joy for all people. God is with us. God is our shelter and a shield about our face. God is comfort and peace amidst a tsunami of selfishness and seething rage. God, wash our hands in a living water. God gives and makes us to be manna in a barren land. Oh, may loving kindness, courage, compassion, humility, generosity, and light be the story our lives tell. And even when the buildings go dark, may such a church abide and shine. Church, your pastor loves you, and he is praying for you. And he and Winnie wish you a good night.